Hey, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan.
Here's one of the things that happens when you leave religion, at least when you leave Mormonism the way we did, theoretically, is that you instantly get a 10% raise.
That's true.
And that's a lovely thing.
Yeah.
Most people give some of their money or a lot of their money to their religion of choice for a long time, and you never get to get that back.
No, you don't.
But you do suddenly have a little bit more cash flowing, and you might not know what to do with it, because let me tell you something. You're coming out of being probably a bit of a credulous dupe.
Yes.
So we've brought on Phil Ferguson from the Phil Ferguson Show, the eponymous show.
How y'all doing?
To teach us a little bit of how to money.
That's right.
So Phil, welcome.
Well, thank you. The first question I have, I didn't ask in advance. May I swear?
Oh yeah,
please.
Okay. So why is it so fucking cold in here? I've got a titty on already.
We just like it when the nipples are popped.
That's right, man. It's nice and cold, but we're here at the American Atheist Conference, having a hell of a time, and thank you for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming on. It was fortuitous that you were here, and we thought we needed to take advantage. You've been doing a podcast, your own podcast, the Phil Ferguson Show, for a good long while now.
It is, and it's actually my third podcast, and most people don't know that, and I'm okay with that. But the first one I was on a friend's podcast called The Pink Atheist.
Oh, right.
And it was feminism and atheism, and then I left to do what was called Skeptic Money. Did that for a while, and then stopped. And I thought about doing a new podcast, but I couldn't think of a clever name because I just don't do that shit. And someone said, "Why don't you just call it the Phil Ferguson Show?" And there's this silence, and he's like, "You don't like the idea?" And I go, "Oh no, I like it too much." So the skepticism in me always has to go, pause.
Right.
That sounds like something good. I got to make sure. And the idea was that it gives me the freedom to cover whatever the fuck I want.
Indeed.
So we can talk about politics. We can talk about religion. We can talk about money, which is a big thing of mine. We can talk about colonization of Mars for an episode. Anything I'm interested in, because I'm doing it to entertain myself.
Right.
The fact that I have any listeners is a miracle, and I'm delighted to have them.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, we feel the same.
I feel the same way.
So welcome. And, I think a lot of our listeners might be asking themselves, well, what's the difference between investing or handling one's money inside and outside of a religion? But I think that there are different mindsets. I think that someone in a religion thinks differently than someone outside of a religion. Would you agree with that?
I think that's generally true. However, there are plenty of people that are atheists that still never really learned how to process information and process it wrong and are prone to conspiracy theories. But I do have a religious tie, and if I can tell you a story about investing.
Please.
Yeah.
So a friend of the family, we'll just call it that. She's at our house one day, and she says, "Hey, Phil, I followed your advice." And my response to that is, "Oh, fuck." Because she didn't follow my advice, because if she followed my advice, we would be talking about what she should do next already.
Right.
Before.
Instead of her coming and telling me what she did.
Right.
She didn't follow my advice, because my advice is talk to me. Step one. And she said,
"Don't take financial advice from a podcast."
Exactly. No, please don't. Please don't. By the way, none of this should be considered personalized financial advice.
Right.
Past performance does not guarantee future results. And so she came to me and she said, "I bought a stock." And I go, "A stock?" And she's like, "Well, a bunch of shares." And I go, "Okay, I assumed that, but
right.
like one company." And she says, "Yeah." And the guy that sold it to me said in 6 months it would double in price.
The guy. Oh, God.
And I'm like, that's not how that shit works. I mean,
right.
And besides, if I knew, which would be impossible, if I knew a stock was going to double in 6 months, why the fuck would I tell you?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I borrow every money and mortgage my house and buy that stock and double my money in 6 months? That's almost as good as the roulette wheel, right? I can just double my money. So I was like, okay, that's not going to happen. Tell me about this company. So she starts telling me about the company, and they are working on patenting a process to float up weather balloons and have them tethered to the ground with a carbon fiber line and being able to power entire cities with the difference of static electricity from the upper atmosphere to the surface of the ground.
Oh, boy.
Sounds perfect.
And so I'm like, red flag.
What could go wrong?
Right, red card, you're out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we go look at the website, and thank you, Lord Jesus, for allowing me to save a screenshot of this website, because the company, as predicted, is now gone.
Right.
And it had an image of a city.
Probably fled to Brazil by now.
They had an image of a city floating on this piece of land. and a kite up in the air, and the kite string comes down and wraps around the city with its loving embrace, and then plugs into a wall outlet.
Oh, I love it.
And so I asked my friend, I said, do you know when the most powerful static electricity occurs between Earth and the upper atmosphere? And she's like, no. And I said, it's called a thunderstorm.
Right.
You know what happens to weather balloons in a thunderstorm?
Right.
They're shredded.
Right.
And so you're going to have this balloon that's 4 miles up, and it gets shredded, and now it drops a 4-mile long, incredibly thin carbon fiber strand. Can you imagine what the terminal velocity of that falling object would be? Right. I mean, we're talking about slicing people in half when it gets near the surface. Absolutely staggeringly stupid. And she bought stock in this, and she goes, well, it was only 50 cents a share. And I go, it doesn't matter what the price is.
Right.
How much did you invest? $5,000.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Guess how much money she had?
$5,000.
Well, now zero. But yeah, she had $5,000. And so I said, okay, so what you need to do is go back to the person that sold this to you just a couple of weeks ago and say, I figured out what you did. You fucking scammed me. Give me the money back.
Right.
And they'll go, oh, baby, don't worry your pretty little head.
Yeah.
Right,
You just don't understand how investing works. This is a good opportunity. Sometimes stocks go up. Sometimes they go down. And, it's likely you're still going to make money. And then you say, this fucking bullshit, get your boss in here. And she's like, I can't talk to them like that. And I said, you know what? I'll go with you. Right? I'll do this. This will be fun. And then you say, if you don't give me my money back, I'm going to file a formal complaint with the SEC of the state of Illinois.
Right.
And she's like, well, I couldn't do that because I wouldn't want to hurt the reputation of someone in my church.
Oh.
And there it goes.
Boom.
Yeah. And she was in the middle of a divorce because her husband, I shit you not, I could not make this shit up, got caught embezzling money from his employer and spending it, again, I kid you not, on cocaine and hookers.
Of course.
And the reason he got caught is because little Timmy, their son, who was 12, dad forgot to close the browser.
Oh, man.
Where he was hooking up with prostitutes.
Well,
This story has everything.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the full Monty. Oh,
Yeah.
wait, that's...
It's so
It's no golden plates involved, but it's pretty close.
right. So that's bad investing, and we come from a Mormon background where everything is MLMs, and everybody's going to get rich by not selling a product, but convincing others to not sell a product.
Yeah.
But none of that is actually going to get anybody rich, and it's not going to provide a retirement for you.
No.
So I think people have to actually do their own financial planning for reals.
Yeah, and one of the phrases I use about these get-rich-quick schemes is, have you ever known anyone that keeps trying to strike it rich?
Yeah.
Did you ever notice they keep trying?
They
Right.
Keep trying, keep missing.
Yeah, because if it fucking worked, you'd do it once and you'd be out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. If any of these things worked, that guy would pull up in a Ferrari at some point, and you'd be like, aha, that it worked.
It finally worked.
It's like the people that tell you you can make a fortune in real estate if you just buy my $300 educational package.
Right.
Well, if they made such a fortune, why are they selling you shit? Why don't they just give it to you?
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like you're impugning my degree that I got in 2 weekends at Trump University.
Yeah.
And that's not what you're meaning to do,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hail Trump.
Yes.
Der Fuhrer.
Yes.
Yeah, we did an episode just a little while ago about something called the Dream Mine in Utah, which you mentioned the golden plates. Some old Mormon got it in his head that there were more of those buried under a mountain.
All these
And
treasures.
All these treasures. And he's been selling shares in the Dream Mine. Well, he's long since passed, but people are still buying and peddling and selling shares in this mine.
That's awesome.
It's got, how far down has it gone? 2,000 feet?
Yeah, like
2,000 feet, yeah.
a ridiculous amount that they have already dug, and work semi-continues on the project.
Yeah, so there's credulous people everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and religion breeds sort of credulousness, and
It does. It encourages you just to believe what you're told and don't question it.
Right.
Hey, do you remember the name of that company, the balloon company?
No, I don't.
You want to get in on that, Doug?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was like Amazon.
Halliburton.
I don't remember. I do have a whole PowerPoint presentation that I've given on it, and like I said, I've got those screenshots. And
Yes.
It was so funny because I showed her this trading activity for the stock, and the trading activity was so thin, which means low,
Right.
like 100 shares a day,
Right.
that the $5,000 means she bought 10,000 shares. The very act of her trying to liquidate her position would depress the stock price even more because no one's buying it. There's no demand for the supply. But
yes,
I thought when I did my show, because I talk about investing almost every week, I thought I will run out of stuff to criticize and be skeptical about. I was wrong.
So what you're saying is you can't just believe a nice guy with a handshake?
Yeah. Or you can't just believe something's going to work and make you money like Bitcoin.
Right. I'm sure you've done some shows on Bitcoin.
I did a double episode on Bitcoin, a total of 2.5 hours.
Right.
And that was the single largest, most vitriolic response I ever got from atheists on any show that I ever did.
I'm sure.
And I got lucky. I did it on December 21st, 4 days after it hit $20,000.
Right.
And the first hour and 15 minutes was, what is Bitcoin? What is blockchain? How does this work? So if you really want to know how that stuff works, listen to that episode.
Right.
If that's all you want, stop. If you want to understand why it cannot work, listen to the second part.
As a continuing way to make money.
No, period.
Period. Okay.
Just
as a concept.
It must fail. It is inversely scalable.
Right.
And so it is doomed by design.
Right.
But people would argue with me, and I get emails that said everything you said was wrong. I'm like, I talked for 2.5 fucking hours.
Everything.
Right. I couldn't do that if I tried. And so I'd say, pick one thing that was wrong. Let me double check, and I'll issue a correction.
Right.
And crickets.
Well, here's what's amazing is that the Bitcoin's a really interesting example because a few people made a lot of money.
Yeah.
They bought when it was low, they sold when it was high, and they made a lot of money. By the time you heard about that, it was too late. You don't get to do that.
This plays perfectly into the moment I knew as a fact it was over was when the cashier at the Piggly Wiggly asked me about Bitcoin.
Right.
When you get to that level of there's the last suckers in.
Yeah.
Right.
And it has to be doomed. The single biggest difference between Bitcoin and Tulip Bulb Mania that happened a couple years ago is with one of them you could actually grow a flower.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it does seem like we might need to rely on actually data-driven, good, well-thought-out investing.
I think that's recommended, yeah.
So where do you recommend we start to learn about how to handle our money so that we don't end up idiots poor on the street?
I thank you for that prompting question. It's almost like we talked about this before the show. I do have a recommended reading list of 4 books.
Oh, good.
And I do strongly, very, very strongly suggest you read them in order.
Okay.
It starts from incredibly basic to incredibly complicated. The first book is called The Richest Man in Babylon.
Okay. That sounds religious. I'm skeptical.
Well, it's the Babylon religion, so it's all good. The Babylon religion of money.
Okay.
Allegedly, these stories were found on tablets from 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, which is obviously bullshit. But the book was written about 100 years ago, which makes it out of copyright. So you can get a copy for like $2.99. You can get the Audible book for a couple of bucks.
What is it in Bitcoin?
It's 0.0. I don't know.
Yeah. There's not that many zeros.
14 Bitcoins.
Yeah, exactly. Check tomorrow.
Yeah.
It'll be more.
And the nice thing about that book is it's stories. It's lighthearted. It's an easy 2 to 3 hour read. Be advised, it was written 100 years ago, so it has some culturally inappropriate content that we might find offensive today.
Okay.
My apologies.
But the financial stuff is solid.
The financial stuff is solid, and it's not really math, and it's just stories. And the basic idea is this is why you need to save money. This is why saving money works, and this is how you become wealthy in a general sense.
Okay.
Good starter, especially if you've not ever really managed to save money. It addresses that very specifically.
Okay.
The second book is called A Random Walk Down Wall Street.
Okay.
And
who's that by?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, you're on the spot. A Random Walk Down Wall Street. You can look up who it's by, you lazy fucks.
Yeah. And the nice thing about all these books that I recommend, the newest one is like 40 years old. However, they do update. But A Random Walk Down Wall Street, I think, is the next 3 books. Actually, the next 2 books are all originally written in the 70s, but they've been updated every 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
So I think it's like 7th or 8th edition that we're in now, A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And that will teach you what is a mutual fund, what is an index fund, what is a stock, what is a bond, what is short, what is long, and a lot of words. Yeah, exactly.
No, does it get into to credit default swaps?
I'm pretty sure it touches them near the end.
Okay.
So it
touches them in a bad place.
Yeah. It gives you a lot of information. Once you have that foundation of the language to be able to understand, you can go to the next book.
The Art of the Deal?
The Art of the Deal. The Art of the Deal, Part 2, How to Get Out of Jail. The next one is, what is it? Winning the Loser's Game.
Okay.
And that explains how you should invest today might be different than how you should have invested in the 60s.
Right.
And the value of index funds.
Okay.
The fourth book is called Common Sense on Mutual Funds.
Okay.
And that's written by John C. Bogle. See, I knew that one. John C. Bogle. He's the guy that started Vanguard Mutual Fund Company.
All right.
Okay.
He is pretty much the person that invented index funds. And this is a big, fat book. The other ones, you could get them on Audible. You could get them on Kindle. You could get them in paperback. I don't care how you do it. But this book, please buy the hardback version. Make notes in it, around it, on separate paper. I don't care how you do it. Treat this like a textbook.
Get a highlighter.
Yeah, it'll feel like a textbook. It is filled with data, statistical analysis, standard deviations, charts, tables, graphs, everything. And if you don't have the previous books under your belt to understand the language, you're going to end up looking up words, and it's going to be a long, slow grind through this book. And even if you have done all those other books, you can take 3 to 6 months to go through this book. It is not a Harry Potter book. Do not sit down and over 8 hours read it.
Okay.
You're going to want to go through it slow and steady. This is going to affect your fortune, your portfolio, your investments, if you're lucky, for the next 50 to 60 years. So take some time and understand it. And if you go through all 4 of these books, if you learn even 60% of what's in these books, you will probably beat 95% of all other investors. So you're going to do great.
Well, one of the things that's hard about this is that, as Uncle Mark delicately pointed out to us, a lot of us nod off a little bit on these subjects and tune out, and it's hard to really work up interest, in part because money is stressful to think about, and a lot of us are just making our bills and don't feel like we even have the money to start an investment portfolio. Like, that feels out of reach for a lot of people. But I think it's worth getting over those humps, getting past those hang-ups that we all have, so that we can, just because, like you say, we got to be thinking 10, 30, 40 years down the line, because there's going to come a time when we're not going to want to be working. And if we're not prepared, we're all going to be Walmart greeters, trying to make a little bit of money when we're 82 years old.
Well, and tying it back to the religious thing for a second, Phil, there's, when we grew up Mormon, as young men, there was this weird thing that there were a lot of weird things, but the weird money thing was you as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, you're responsible for collecting basically the tithes. So you would go around to houses in the neighborhood with these little blue envelopes, and it was critical. We were taught we must never touch the money, right? So there was this odd, and this keeps coming back to me in life. There was this odd money-phobic thing where it's like, it's dirty, you mustn't touch it, it will sully you, and you had to hand the envelope to the person, and they put the cash in the thing. You not remember that? Well, it was a huge deal in our life, but couple that with the fact that Mormons very much have kind of a prosperity gospel kind of thing, right? That success in money equals spiritual success.
Right. The more you give, the better you are, and then the more will come back to you. Somehow.
Yeah, and you get kind of twisted up like a balloon about money.
I think you just provided a way to improve the mob shakedown for protection money.
Right, exactly.
Just send 12-year-old boys in there that can't touch the money.
Yeah, right.
To say, it's not me, it's Jesus.
Right.
I'd sure hate for something to
this feels a little light
happen
today.
to your shop. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and then the other thing that's very common in Mormon culture is because of that prosperity kind of doctrine, there's a lot of debt. There's a lot of credit card debt. The competition to have the biggest boat, the biggest house, the best Suburban, which is very Mormon assault vehicle, is very intense. So Mormons get into a lot of debt. And so there's a lot of the multi-level marketing because it's a way to get out of debt.
It's not.
It's not.
That is
but
not true.
People are ripe for that kind of scam. And yeah, so
does your show? I'll bet your show has some get out of debt fast tips.
No.
Oh.
Well, I mean,
pay it is the first thing.
Yeah. One of my ideas, I stole this from somebody else, is the overall process is how to money.
Yeah.
And it has 3 really basic steps, and it's painfully oversimplistic, and I understand that. But the first one is to spend less than you make. Mm-hmm. Second one is to invest wisely and efficiently, and the third one is time.
Yeah.
It takes time to make a portfolio, and it's difficult. And a lot of advisors will recommend that you save 10% a year. I say 20.
Wow.
10% will work if you're 22, and you do it every single year. And you want to retire when you're 65. Who the fuck saves when they're 22?
Right.
I didn't. So you're going to need to do 20, and maybe you get to retire earlier. And for me, it's not the fact that I want to retire, but at any moment when my portfolio is big enough, I could walk away from my job.
Right.
Now, I'm not going to walk away from my job because it's barely working at all. But if you have a job that you don't like, and you know if they push you just that one bit too far, you could walk out of there and never come back, never go anywhere else.
And be fine.
That provides this psychological freedom and happiness that maybe allows you to tolerate it and keep working. But you know that you could at any moment leave.
Yeah.
But getting out of debt, it's rough.
It's very hard.
I constantly talk about understanding debt and its power on you. But I also love debt, like Trump might say, which makes me want to cry. I just made that connection. But as an example, I just bought a car, and one of my rules on the show is never buy a new car. So, of course, I broke it and bought a new car.
Right.
But I'm special, right? That couple things is, one, I do okay. I save a lot of money, and I'm on path to retire when I want to, or at least be able to retire when I want to. So when you have all those conditions met and you want to buy a new car, that's cool. When you're 28 and you're struggling to get by and you buy a new car when a used one would have done, you just made a huge financial mistake. And when I bought this car, let's just say it was $40,000. I was in the dealership and I said, 5-year loan? No, longer. 6-year loan? No, longer. And I finally got a 7-year loan. 84 months. And of course, the longer the loan, the slightly higher interest rate. I think it ended up being like 5.8, 5.9. And the finance guy finally comes over and slaps down this 24-inch long triple carbon paper.
Right.
And he says, is this payment now low enough for you? And I said, I don't give a shit about the payment, dude. I have $40,000 I could bring in here and just fucking pay cash for this car. And the finance guy and the salesman are like, what are you making us go through all this shit for? Why don't you just pay for the car? And I go, because on the truth in lending statement, it shows that I'm going to pay $9,000 in interest over 7 years.
Right.
And a lot of people think that's nuts. And out of context, they're right. That's nuts. If my options are paying off this car or putting the money under my mattress or in the backyard, that would be nuts. I should just fucking pay off the car.
Right.
But I'm going to take the $40,000 that I didn't pay on the car, and I'm going to invest it in the stock market. Now, there's some risk in the short term on this, but if you do this over your entire life, the expectation is you're going to make 10% a year. And in 7 years, that money will double. So the $40,000 becomes $80,000. So I made 40, and I spent 9 to make the 40. I'm net 31 if, and this is very important, if I can make all the payments out of my current cash flow.
Right.
Because if you have to take your payments out of that first $40,000 every month, you only clear $9,000, not $30,000.
Right.
But those are ways to think about money where you can use debt to your advantage. But if you have a credit card with 22.9% debt, fucking pay it off as fast as you can.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things you do have to, and it requires the discipline to actually do the investing. If you tell yourself, well, I'll do better in an investment than I will than I will just keeping this money or whatever, or paying the money and getting the car, and then you don't do the investing. If you don't do the discipline, then those numbers don't work out.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
I think I know the answer to this before I ask it, but obviously people should be educated investors. They should educate themselves. They should figure this stuff out and know what they're doing. But do you recommend they do it without a financial advisor or without reaching out to?
It's perfectly fine to do it without a financial advisor, but you have to just put some effort into it.
Right.
I mean, people might research which cell phone they're going to buy.
Yeah.
They research what car they're going to buy. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just go in and buy shit, and that's fine. But I find people that are obsessive and will do research and study things, but then when it comes to money, they kind of close down and they can't function.
I've heard of Apple. I'm just going to put it all in that.
Yeah. And so if you just, like, for example, I could change the oil in my car.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fucking do it.
Right.
I don't care. Right. I'm going to pay someone to do it. And people will go, Phil, it's really easy. I could show you how. I don't care. I don't give a shit. Even if I knew exactly how to do it and you help me do it 10 times, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to pay someone to do it.
Right.
If you feel that way about money, don't do it yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
But the industry is a slime pit of people that are trying to get commissions to sell you shit.
That's why you go to somebody in your church.
That's right.
That's why you go to a handsome young man who's got a weather balloon thing.
Yeah. Only if they're Mormon, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you can trust those fuckers.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
But what you want to look for, if you do want to get an advisor, you want to make sure that you get someone who is a fiduciary. And is willing to put that in writing. And what the fiduciary means is that they will put your interest above theirs.
How do you find that out? How do you discover that?
You ask them.
You just ask them.
And
they're not, and they're by law they can't say they are if they aren't. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like asking if someone's a cop. They have to tell you.
That is not the case.
Yeah.
We are not.
Are you a hooker? Yes. I am. So when you sit down with somebody, you meet with them, or you just call them on the phone and say, "Are you a fiduciary?" Anything other than yes is a no.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. If they say, well, it depends on the type of investments, or it depends on what we use, or for IRAs I am, but for taxable accounts I'm not, or that normally applies to trust and doesn't really apply to investments.
That's a no.
All of it's no.
Yeah.
They should just say yes. And if someone is a fiduciary on part of your portfolio and not on the other part of your portfolio, they're not a fucking fiduciary.
Right. Uh-huh.
It's like going to your attorney who's going to help defend you in court, and the first thing he does is he goes, by the way, officer, my client admitted to me that they did steal that car. Well, then they're not doing their job. They're supposed to defend you.
Right.
Your advisor is supposed to defend you, and the second part of that is not only are they a fiduciary, but they are a fee only, not fee-based is not good enough. It has to be fee only, and they should be able to put all this shit in writing.
Okay.
Okay.
So here's another question.
So
then.
everybody, I hope you're all taking notes.
Yeah, I'm going to listen back and take notes myself. Right. We've talked about this before, about going to a doctor or a psychologist, psychiatrist who's religious. We wouldn't, as atheists, not feel comfortable letting someone into our brains or perhaps into our mouths or bodies that has some odd beliefs. Do you think that applies to financial advice?
It does, but it's generally much less troubling, because you can talk about money and not bring in religion or politics at all, generally, although I have exceptions to that, and you can find those exceptions. But if your advisor is sitting down and talking to you and all of a sudden says, can you explain Building 7? Get the fuck out.
Right, yeah,
just right. We're done here.
Your finances are too important to leave it to any kind of chance.
And I've had people who actually called me and hired me because they had an advisor that they've had for years, and all of a sudden they just went off the fucking deep end.
Right.
And it can be about religion.
Yeah.
You should go to my church. No, fucking you're out of there.
Right.
But on the other hand, I got to be a little sensitive, because I'm making a marketing pitch to non-believers by promoting conferences and being at conferences like this. So I can't criticize it from a marketing perspective, because I'm fucking doing it.
Right. Yeah.
And I hate it when people call me and say, oh, I don't need to know all the details. I trust you because you're an atheist. Fuck me. Do not do that.
Right.
Inspect people and respect what they inspect. Read the context. Read the documents. Trust, but verify if you want to. But never just assume I'm going to do what's in your best interest, just like you should never do that with anybody else.
Right.
But if you study up, if you feel comfortable, you read the books, you pay attention, you're really into this, you can do it by yourself. You don't need to hire anybody. But what I do hate, and now someone's going to be a smartass and do this, occasionally I'll get an email and someone says, hey, Phil, I know everything you know. Why should I hire you? And my response now is, you don't fucking know everything that I know, because I would have never written this fucking email.
Right,
What the hell is wrong with you? You think I'm going to be impressed that you know shit? I don't give a fuck. If you're confident doing your own investments, do your own fucking investments.
Don't bother me about it.
I have never told anybody they have to hire me. And one of the unique things about my podcast, I give the exact symbols of the funds that I use.
Right.
The 5-digit letter combination. I tell general proportions. I always have the disclaimer that this is not specific financial advice. Check with your own advisor. Do your own research. But I'm not hiding anything. I'm not saying, here's a way you can make a bunch of money, but only if you call or subscribe, hire me.
Right.
Matter of fact, any listeners of your show, if they email me, Phil@Polaris Financial Planning, first of all, do not send anything. Do not send your statements. Do not send documents. Don't send your birth certificate, your social security number. Yes, people have fucking done this.
Dick pics? Can I send that?
If you send all that to us, we'll make sure Phil gets it.
Yeah.
You just send me an email, say, hey, I heard you on the show. You said that you would give me some free time. Are you going to honor that? Are you going to talk to me? And I'll say yes. If I don't respond in a week or two, it's because I got fucking busy and I got distracted. Send me another email.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Are you a fiduciary?
I am. Yes.
Are you fee-based?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Boom, baby.
Yeah.
Fee only.
Fee only.
There you go.
Thank you for
fucked up.
Yeah. It would be really sad if I said, well,
Right.
it depends.
Gotcha.
It depends. But, if you want to contact me, send me an email. And the reason for that first email is to make sure that you have the right email address and you didn't type it in by mistake.
Right.
Because if you're sending shit, you want to reply to an email that you've confirmed. But send me your phone number. That's the thing I want. Send me your phone number. I'm a talker. All right, you figure that out. And we'll talk about your situation. Maybe it's 15 minutes. Maybe it's 30 minutes. And if that's all you needed, just a couple nudges, you had a couple questions that you were lingering and you don't have the time to go back through the 300 episodes that I've done, just call or send me your phone number. I'll call you. We'll talk about it. If you want to talk some more, we can do that. If you want to talk 4, 5, 6, 7 times, okay, I'm probably going to tell you to fuck off because at some point I got other shit to do.
Sure. Right.
But I'm here to help. And I've had this situation where sometimes I've talked for people an hour here, an hour there over a couple years. I just had this happen. And the couple is now retiring. And because they listen to my show, they know it's more complicated in retirement and how to manage the money and how to allocate when you take out, what you take out. And they called me and
I
said,
thought it was easy. It's just a reverse mortgage, right?
Yeah.
and then you're set.
you could make it really easy, but it won't be optimal.
Right, yes.
And so they said, we now want to hire you. And it turns out they've got a $2 million portfolio.
Oh, excellent.
And I was like, well, this is my rate. I mean, you're going to pay me a lot of money. He goes, yeah, that's cool. I understand. And the whole idea is that my rate is 1% or less, depending on the size of the portfolio. Bigger is better. No fee is too large.
Right.
And as long as they get more than they're paying me, it should be a win-win scenario.
Right.
Exactly.
And if you ever think that you're not getting a win-win scenario, you fucking fire my ass.
Right.
It's easy. There's no hooks. There's no traps. There's no reasons to prevent you from getting out. You can just pick up the phone and say, you're an asshole. You're out.
And do that with any whoever your financial advisor is. If you're not, if they're not getting you more money than they're making off of you,
Yeah, it's absolutely. And
you're doing it wrong.
I've done full shows on annuities. And it's one of those things. Many years ago, I did a generic annuity example. And I got a lot of emails saying, well, that's a generic example. It's not specific. I said, okay, you know what? There's merit to that response.
Sure.
And so shortly after that occurred, Nationwide, I remember because that's Nationwide is on your side. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they sent me this stuff and said, hey, we've got this great double plus good annuity that you should sell to your clients. Do you like to know more information about it? I'm like, yes, I do. So I went to online seminars and webinars. I got all the promotional material, and then I sat down and I broke down the fucking math.
Right.
And then I did a 25-minute long show with mathematics.
Right.
And I'm scared out of my fucking mind how fucking boring is 25 minutes going to be of mathematics. And I got tons of email people going, now I get it. I've always heard people don't get annuities, but no one ever says why. They don't see why because it's fucking complicated.
Right.
And each annuity is a unique contract. You have to read the 120-page document and understand every detail.
Right.
If you're not going to do that, don't fucking buy it. Keep
Right.
it simple. But they're magically delicious. The genius behind some of these plans, I had someone call me after the end of 2017 where the market was up 14%. And they have this variable indexed annuity, and they made zero. Formally, officially, they made zero for the year. And he's like, "How is this possible?" And I go, "I don't even think that's possible. Send me some documents." And I read through it, and I go, "Oh, that's fucking clever shit." And so I explained to him how it works, and he's like, "Well, do you think I should sell it?" And I go, "Hell yeah, dude!" And he's like, "Well, if I sell it now, because I've only owned it for 2 years, there's an 8% penalty for selling it." And I said, "You just had a 14% penalty for owning it."
Right.
Oh, damn. So they're beautiful mathematical minefields for you, the investor. But there's the case, exactly what you're talking about. You made nothing. The insurance company took your money and they invested it in the stock market and probably made pretty close to 14.
Right.
So they made 14, you made nothing. It's usually not that bad. It's usually you make 2 or 3 or 4 and they make 6 or 8.
Right.
but it's staggering that they make more money than you do with your money.
Well, Phil Ferguson, this has been eye-opening.
Well, hang on. Let's talk about the gold standard.
God
All right,
damn it.
Here we go.
Oh,
No.
I thought you were real there for a second. Woo.
We're bailing. We're bailing.
Yeah.
Pull the chute.
Twin Towers.
All right.
Wait, I can sum this all up. The Jews. Go ahead, Dan.
Yes, indeed. There they are.
Rothschilds.
in their glory. New World Order.
And I'd like to thank Mr. Soros for the weekly check.
Right, yeah, exactly. I go to the protests just for the money. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
Yeah, indeed.
Grazie mille.
And where do people go to find you?
The show is the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show.
Show you were born to host.
That's right. That's right. It had my name on it. It was just waiting to be dug up in a backyard in upstate Palmyra.
There you go.
It was weird when that other guy was host. It was good that they found you.
I'm also on Twitter at Skeptic Money. I don't often check there, and if you send me any financially related specific questions, I will tell you to fuck off because you have to email me. I actually have to follow regulations and track correspondence, and I refuse to track 15 different social media platforms.
Right.
So, sorry, old school. Email phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. If you want to have me talk to you, send me your phone number. It really helps me out a lot. Do not send any confidential or private information until we've established a connection, and you still want to do that later. Email, Facebook, Phil Ferguson, Facebook, The Phil Ferguson Show. I guess that's the general stuff.
There you go. Thanks so much for coming on. Hopefully now all of our listeners will be rich and they can give more money to our show.
There you go.
Patreon.com.
That's right.
Invest in podcasting.
Best of luck to you. It was a pleasure to have you on, and let's move on.